G3 Assistance through Virginia's community colleges is your pathway to a new future, helping those who qualify pay for school and train for the right career, right where you are, right now. Learn more at vccs.edu/G3.
This is a CBC podcast.
Well, health officials thought it might be, but now we know for sure. The coronavirus variant B1617 is behind the cluster in Central, which is now up to 46 cases. It's the variant that was first identified in India. Now, earlier this week, Dalhousie infectious disease researcher and clinician Dr. Lisa Barrett told On the Go's Ted Blades what makes the B1617 stand out from the rest of the variant pack.
It does seem to be somewhat more transmittable even than 117. How transmittable or how much more transmittable is not clear, and exactly why it is more transmittable is not clear, whether it's solely because the virus itself is different and better at getting in and causing infection and dividing and replicating, or if it's also because it may have slightly less coverage with some of the vaccines, including AstraZeneca and Pfizer that have been used in the UK. It is very transmittable. Doesn't seem to cause more deaths than 117, but also, although the vaccines are effective, they may be slightly less effective, particularly after only one dose, and that's something we should keep an eye on.
Well, our next guest is keeping a very close eye on that. Rod Russell is a professor of virology and immunology at Memorial University, and he's here now to share what the latest research is saying. Good morning, Rod.
Good morning, Chris.
So we're around, like the 55% mark of first doses here in Newfoundland and Labrador, but Dr. Fitzgerald said yesterday that some of these new cases are in people who have actually had the shot. How do you read that information?
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that because we know that one shot of any of these vaccines isn't enough to protect everyone from getting infected. So that's kind of what we'd expect at this point.
What is the latest research telling us about how well that first dose is performing, specifically for the latest variant, B1617? If you look at one dose versus two dose, of course, it's going to be different, right? The reason we have the booster is because one dose wasn't enough in the original studies to give protection or a level of protection that we'd like to see. So we need the booster for most of the vaccines that are approved right now. But with the 1617, what was known as the Indian variants, the data is actually pretty good. So it's come up very recently, and with the Pfizer vaccine, it looks like it's 88% effective at preventing severe disease. And even the AstraZeneca vaccine, which was used for a long time in places where that virus was spreading, that one is still 60% effective. So the numbers that I'm seeing very recently are very encouraging, and they're right on par with the numbers that we've seen with 117, for example. And is that in terms of where we are with the first dose? Give us a snapshot of how effective the vaccines are performing with just one dose at this point.
Right. So, no, there's a big difference between first dose protection and two dose protection. So, in general, we see 30 to 50% protection with one dose, which, that's not enough, right? If you have one dose, then there's it's like a flip of a coin, right? There's a 50-50 chance that you can still get infected. And then if we only have half of our population vaccinated, then there's a 50-50 chance that someone you run into has been vaccinated or not, and they would only have a 50-50 chance of getting infected or not. So it's still a higher risk of infecting somebody if you've had one dose. Well, no, I shouldn't say a higher risk, but there is a risk of infecting someone if they haven't already had one dose. But once you've had two doses, then everyone's numbers go up. So if you have two doses of a vaccine and you're in the 60 to 80 to 90% range of protection, then the people who have also had two doses are also up there. Then the chances go way down that you're going to transmit the virus to somebody else.
I want to ask you a little bit more about some of the new data that's coming out of the UK right now, specifically because, we're looking at, I guess, about a week away from seeing a reopening plan from the province. So in the UK, I understand they've been mapping people that have had the vaccine and people that have been infected. So, what has that study proved to us, and what can it tell us about what reopening could look like?
Yeah, so in the UK especially, they've been documenting and tracking infection and vaccination very closely. So they've been doing it by home address, and what that means is anybody who gets vaccinated, it gets logged into the database that people in that household have been vaccinated, or someone in that household has been vaccinated. And then if somebody gets infected, that's also linked to their addresses. So what that means now is, in an anonymous way that doesn't, really impinge on anybody's privacy, you can go back into the database then after, some time and look at, for example, in the UK study right now that's coming out with data has looked at 365,000 households. And what they've been able to do then is basically say, when people were vaccinated, did people in their home also, get infected if the vaccinated person got infected? So what they're seeing now is that we're finally getting data on transmission in amongst vaccinated people. So what we're seeing is that if people are vaccinated, there's a 40 to 60% less chance of transmitting to someone else within their household. So we're finally getting the answers to the question of whether or not the vaccinations will decrease transmission and spread within the population.
And, I'm looking to the U.S. as well, Rod, where they've had a pretty aggressive vaccine strategy. What is the science behind their "you can take your mask off inside now" approach? Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure the science, is backing up the U.S.'s policies in every situation. But they're very focused on getting back to normal and getting business back to normal. You keep in mind, they've mostly had the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines in the U.S., and these are showing really good numbers. I guess they feel that people who are vaccinated are really not spreading. I'm not sure. Personally, I don't think 40 to 60% that the numbers we've seen in the U.S. is enough to say that. But I guess the U.S. right now feels that people who are fully vaccinated or have 2 shots are at a very low risk of spreading infection, so they feel it's safe to go ahead and take the masks off and start to live normally.
Last question, about 30 seconds here. What is it going to take for us to, throw our masked up caution to the wind here in Canada?
Really high levels of vaccination in the population. Until we have 75 is the number we've been talking about, but I think we need even higher than that because, if 25% of the people can still be infected, that's too many people, and then we're still going to have a lot of virus in our communities. So I think, now that we're seeing the vaccines are working well and we're seeing cases go down all around the world in places where there's vaccination programs or aggressive vaccination programs, I think more people are starting to get vaccinated, and I think as we get higher percentages of people vaccinated, we'll start to get more likely that we'll be able to live normally again.
Rod, thanks so much for this.
You're welcome. Anytime.
That's Rod Russell, Professor of Virology and Immunology at Memorial University.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.